I'm Brian Robertson. This is Bernard-Marie Chiquet. I got it. And today we're here to talk about the difference between holacracy and sociocracy.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people out there that have been asking questions because on the surface they look fairly similar. And I thought you'd be a great person to have a dialogue with, to get out there, because you've been through a pretty exhaustive sociocracy certification process, training process, and then you've been through our holacracy certification process twice now. Actually came back and went through it again to get deeper, and you're now in our instructor training. And so you are probably the best person out there so far to speak about the differences between the two models and their compatibility or similarities, or where there's touch points, if any. So let's dive in. What do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much. I began with sociocracy, which means 6 years ago. So I dived into all the trainings available around Earth, and I practice it. I do trainings, and I help organizations, non-profit and for-profit, and also families within sociocracy staff. I also studied the source of sociocracy, because sociocracy you can find now is the 4 processes given by Gerard Edenbourg 40 years ago, but it was sourced by Kees Boeke. And it's very interesting because to understand where is the difference between sociocracy and holacracy, we have to understand the source of sociocracy. So I deeply dived in, and I on major project of implementation sociocracy, I can see the limits. And the limits comes with two major issues. First issue is regarding the organization staff. Sociocracy has got 4 processes: so circle, decision process making, double link, and election without candidate. But there is nothing very structured about organization, such as you can find in holacracy, roles, accountabilities, and this kind of stuff. So when it comes to organization, when it comes to clarifying the different spaces, operations, governance, strategy, sociocracy is not very well advanced. So all the project with organization at one step, and I coach a lot, or I coach people helping organization, I can see the limits, and for last month I am helping them, and I take advantage of the holacracy staff as a complement to go forward on the implementation of sociocracy.
So you use sociocracy to get them to a point, to get them from a more conventional modern structure to something more embracing, more integrative, and then ran into the limits of that, and then started moving towards holacracy to add the pieces that sociocracy doesn't include.
Absolutely. And sociocracy in these cases is a good start, because what they learn with sociocracy is a new way of making decision. How within a hierarchical pyramid structure, because the limit there is, as a CEO, the limit is pyramid structure is good for execution. Maybe it's the best way for executing things. But when it comes to decision, with the complexity of the world, things moving very fast, being able, even if you are very clever as a CEO or what kind of leader, to be the only guy who decides, even after having consulting people, it's just impossible. So the good news is that with the process, the circle, the concept of the circle, and the process of making decision, integrative process decision making with sociocracy, based on the equivalence of people, as a CEO is not more alone, and you can get advantage of the diversity of perspectives all around the table, diversity of the different personalities and types of personalities, in order to enrich a decision which is better. That's a good thing. And again, the sociocracy, just to understand the difference, is founded in the first principle of Kees Boeke. And what was the first principle of Kees Boeke? It's all about people. We are equivalent. So for Kees Boeke, as was beginning of last century, as well, Second World War, Kees Boeke's first principle is how can we make decisions that could take care of the needs of everybody involved and impacted by this decision? That was the issue, and they built a school upon that.
This is my sense as well. Sociocracy is founded on that foundation of a deeper democracy. It is all about the people. It's all about trying to give everyone a voice and come to a consensus. And I don't mean as a decision-making style, but as in the sense of we are all on the same page. And then for the sake of us, you get that feel in sociocracy that the focus is on the people, on helping the people come together and integrate together for the sake of better humanity, for the sake of the people. It's really grounded in human-centric values. And that's why it's a leap forward from the modern norm, which is almost oblivious to that. It's a leap to a more human-centered, human-centric paradigm. And it has all the benefits and all the limitations of that paradigm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And this is, I think, one of the major philosophical shifts that's embodied in Holacracy and shows up in all of its many structures and processes. And yet it's a subtle one that's easy to miss on the surface, which is the shift from the people-driven motive. We are governing by and for the people, for the sake of the people. We are organizing the people. And Holacracy, which has this subtle shift towards organizing not around the people, but around the work. It's organizing around an evolutionary purpose, as we say. It's not trying to be a better tool for satisfying human needs, wants, desires, values. And yet it does that. But I love how you put it. It's a consequence, not an objective. With Holacracy, we focus instead on what is the evolutionary purpose of this organization, not in the sense of what do we want the organization to be. It's not about us. It's not about our desires, our wants. It's about what is the organization's natural purpose in life, almost like you're looking at it as its own entity, its own life, its own organism. What is its path in the world? Not for the sake of us, but for the sake of the future, for the sake of evolution continuing to unfold, bringing something new to life. And then we are invited to show up fully, authentically in service of that. So this grounding, it sounds so similar, but it's so different for me. And you see that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's. I think it's a key issue to understand both sociocracy and holacracy. Different of grounded. The title of the book of Casebook, which speaks about sociocracy, and sociocracy was invented previously by Auguste Comte, but he took this word and he wrote a document which is named, you can find it on the net, Sociocracy, democracy as it might be. So in his opinion, it was a way of doing much better democracy.
Of advancing democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we also know that Casebook was a Quaker. So, this kind of culture of consensus and people able to, hundreds of people able to go to a decision.
Yeah.
And if you look at some books from some people such as Gilles Charest or John Buck, Gilles Charest also the French. Well, it's a French title. It's a book. It's about democracy and to go to an advanced democracy. And when you go to John Buck book, the title is "We the People."
We the People.
So it's about how do I pass from I to we. How do we build the we?
Yes.
That's the issue of sociocracy.
Which is not at all what Holacracy's focus is.
Absolutely. Holacracy, as you told us, is considering the organization. Well, the hypothesis which is pushed by Holacracy is considering the organization as a living system. And the issue there is how the people within the organization are able to energize the organization to allow it to follow its own path, given this evolutionary impulse.
And the metaphor I use here is that of the parent and the child. The healthy parent knows that their job is not to use their child to get their needs met, but to free the child, liberate the child, and nurture it to find its own path in life. Not to help it be a doctor because we want it to be a doctor, but to find its own path in life as a separate entity. And that's the shift that Holacracy makes to looking at the organization as that child that we're trying to help liberate to find its own path, not use it as a container for us humans.
Yeah, I love this metaphor. And discovering Holacracy, I discovered that maybe 1 or 2 years ago. It frees me from a tension I had within Sociocracy, which was the quest for harmony. When you want to make the we, there is behind that. I take into consideration the reaction of people. My objective is our objective is to go to harmony. And what I discovered in my own life is that harmony is not an objective. Harmony is a consequence. Yes. Being authentic, being part of an organization which I'm disinterested, such as parents, your metaphor, parents and the child, and then the harmony will come. But it is a consequence.
Yes.
It's not an objective.
It's not the focus at all.
No. And when you put harmony as an objective, I can see that in a lot of networks I'm part in, it doesn't work.
Yep.
You come with some pathos, and there is a blend between personal issues, organizational issues. It's horrible.
It ends up grounding in human ego. And that's where I see the limits of models like Sociocracy are that focus on harmony, people coming together, and all of that. Although they add a lot, they reach this limit where they're hitting the wall of human ego, where there's a space created now where ego can actually show up and flourish. If it's all about me, right? Well, that's inviting me to use whatever's around the organization in this case to get my needs met. Right? There's a fusion that it encourages between me or even we and the organization itself, and that space creates a very different energy, a very different feel for the people in it than a space that makes a clear distinction of it's not about you, it's not about your needs, it's not about your wants. And ironically, it's inviting you to show up fully and authentically to the extent you do not end up dominating others towards some larger purpose. And if we can create a space that allows all the people to show up in a way that isn't about them meeting their needs, but about serving something larger than themselves, while still honoring their autonomy, their individuality, and creating a space where it's about the work, right? It's about the purpose and the work. We're organizing around the work, not around what we want, not around what we like or what makes us harmonious or happy. We're organizing around the work of the world to be done, not the work we want to do, but the work to be done. I think that shift is really core to this.
Yeah, I think you made the point. It's a key issue, and again, I think Sociocracy is very good, and Sociocracy and Holacracy are complementary. When it comes, I'm married and I have 5 children, and what we decided as a family is to get Sociocracy processes for whatever decision within our 7 people for the last 5 or 6 years. And because family is not an organization.
Yes.
Family is a group of people.
Yep.
And for that, Sociocracy, we did it's marvelous progress. And people are amazed when they see my children, how they are able to take that power, how they are able to be responsible. So Sociocracy in that case, and you can find other cases such as some eco-village or some staff, is very powerful for making people growing with their taking their place and so on. Well, I saw that with my children, and that was very, 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 very impressive.
Yeah. So for a group of people that wants to live more harmonious, Sociocracy gets you towards that goal. It's when we have an organization that is not about the people. It's about it has some deeper potential to fulfill in the world. It's an organization. It is not just a community, a group. That's when Sociocracy's limits rapidly start showing themselves, both in terms of the tendency to then start dominating that organization with the will of the people. And I think then in the tangible systems, you mentioned the lack of organizational structures. Sociocracy has this concept of a circle meeting that basically is about whatever decisions come up in that circle meeting. There's very little definition to that. In Holacracy, we don't have, quote, circle meetings. We have governance meetings. And in a governance meeting, there is very clear, tangible output. There is a structure to the output that does not exist in Sociocracy, at least not to the same degree or clarity. And that the rules of the game are different. In Holacracy, there is a ruthless focus on processing tensions, one tension at a time. And there's rules of the integrative decision-making process, as we call it, that focuses us on a tension sensed on behalf of the organization, not about us, on behalf of the organization. And the whole process is focused around integrating or addressing that one tension in a way that's workable. It's not about us all bringing our tension and trying to integrate it together at the same time. That happens one at a time. And it's not about whatever we decide. It's about clear, tangible governance. It's an authority structure. It's about granting authority outside of governance meetings. So with Holacracy, it's not simply that the operational leader has authority outside of meetings. Instead, with Holacracy, the governance meetings structure tangibly the authority that different roles have outside the meeting. And then the individuals show up in those roles and energize them. But it's about the roles, not the people, and it's about an actual authority structure, governing structure, that Holacracy defines with its roles and accountabilities and its whole system for that. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah. Well, within Sociocracy, you can put a lot of things inside, and you could decide to use only the Socratic processes for governance issues. But what is missing, again, when there is a true organization, as defined by Holacracy, is the definition of role, accountability, all this engineering. When there is engineering, because in some books there is engineering, it's, let's say, existing paradigm processes, and business process and engineering and so on work. Yeah. So it's nothing very new. I didn't see, maybe I haven't seen everything, but I read all the books. I didn't see something new. And what is very interesting in the holacratic stuff is that because of that, we are able to go to the dynamic steering, which is, in my opinion, the key issue of very concrete and key issue of holacracy. It's a jam for the organization to be able to dynamically, when possible, dynamically steer the organization, and that can be done because of this very structured and precise governance, role, accountabilities, no other outputs, operation is operation, strategy, and the different fixed process.
Yeah, in comparison, it feels like Sociocracy offers a decision-making method, but not a governance structure. So I know it's often called a governance system, but and I get it. I get that in the definition of governance as just a governing of a process, but it is not what I would call a governance system, in the sense that it seems like Sociocracy it gives you a decision-making process and no clear bounds of that. It says we're going to come together and make decisions this way, whatever we decide in this way, it can be revisited in this way, but it doesn't give you the tangible structure that you can put into a constitution that a court could enforce. It lacks all the clarity that comes from what Holacracy offers is limited output. You can't decide anything in a governance meeting. There's a very clear, limited set of outputs, and they are structural. Yeah. They define the way the organization is structured, the way authority happens, and the way how work gets done. But it's not allowed to decide an action or a project in a governance meeting. It's simply not allowed. It doesn't fit the structure. And for good reason. As soon as you allow that output, now it's not clear that this is a governance system. You've blurred it with everything else going on in the organization. So in Holacracy, we carve out a space, and it is a governance system. Yeah. And it actually distributes authority. With Holacracy, the seat of authority is no longer with the operational leader. It's with the governance process and the output of governance. So in the operational domain, the leader no longer has authority to make whatever decision they want. The governance process defines which roles make which decisions with what authority, and there's a whole system for that. And I don't see any of that in sociocracy, it looks more like a decision-making system.
Yeah, while in sociocracy, in the governance meeting, the seat of authority is no more with the leading, with the leader, right? It's because all the people are equivalent.
Right.
But the major difference is that you put your finger on, is that in holacracy you have a governance system, and it's very structured with the role outputs of this meeting is only roles, accountabilities, and you have holacracy one has built a software, so we are sure not to put other things. I think this is a key issue.
Okay.
Go ahead. Another thing I wanted to share is that you spoke previously about tensions. Mm-hmm. Sociocracy, in what I have read and the trainings I went to, different workshops, I have never heard about tension processing. But myself, I use a tension process within I'm very often asked by boards to facilitate boards when there is tensions, conflicts. That's my specialty. And I use sociocracy, and it's okay. And what I do, I just ask for what are the tensions you are feeling, you are sensing, and I put them on the fly at the very beginning of the agenda. So sociocracy, before I was trained to holacracy. So sociocracy allows that. It's not it's not given by the sociocracy corpus, but it allows that to do it. And I think it's just
compared to holacracy, which doesn't just allow it; it forces it.
Yes,
it forces everything that brings up in a meeting.
Absolutely,
is brought by one proposer, one person censor who sensed a tension.
Yeah.
And it has to be clear that there is a tension here that we are addressing by processing it into some governance output, some evolution of the organization's process or structure.
Yeah.
And it is laser focused on one tension at a time versus what I've seen in sociocracy. It looks like, and tell me if this matches your experience, it is possible to for everybody to kind of bring their own tensions all at once and then get into a group process where they are trying to address multiple tensions kind of all together. And my experience is that slows things down quite a bit and can derail the process. And holacracy has this clarity of one tension at a time, really fast. It moves really fast. It doesn't need to move any slower. And it focuses, even in the definition of what, quote, an objection is very, very clear. It is, in holacracy, a reason it's not workable. Not valid to bring an objection that, well, this doesn't integrate some other tension I feel. It needs something else. None of that is valid. It is laser focused, one tension in a way that's workable. That's it. We're not looking for, do you agree with it? Does it make sense? Does it need something else to address some other tension? It's just, is it workable to address one tension? And then once we address that tension, we address the next one and the next one and the next one, and we do it fast. So in the end, we actually address a whole lot of tensions, from my experience, more than any other process I've seen that allows them to all come out at once. How does that fit your experience?
Yeah, that's true. That in sociocracy, and very often I'm asked to help in a conflictual situation. I use a sociocratic process, but in fact I'm like a mediator. I do act mediation. So, having put a security framework, and then which is a basis, because sometimes conflicts are very exhausting, and one tension and then the other tension. So
you're doing that anyway with sociocracy, or you were before you came to holacracy.
Absolutely.
So it's possible to do this with sociocracy.
Absolutely.
It's just not built into the system.
Absolutely, but it's focused people. It's for very focused people. I think this is a key issue.
Yeah.
With holacracy, it's one by one tension, and tension focused directly to organization.
So is it true that there are objections that would be allowed in sociocracy and not allowed by holacracy's rules? So is it true that in sociocracy you could raise an objection, say about you think that it needs something new? In other words, to try to address another tension, a different tension. You're feeling it's a more of a personal objection that I'm arguing for because I don't think that the proposal on the table accounts for X. Whereas in holacracy, it really doesn't matter if it accounts for X. It just matters if it causes harm. So is it true that there's a different threshold for decision making?
Well, coming to objection, we have, again, in sociocracy, we have to go to the source, because a lot of people speak about objection in sociocracy, but in fact they didn't dive in.
Yeah.
So I come back to the source of casebook. What is an objection? Objection is casebook. An objection is when somebody will not be able to execute the decision. Mm-hmm. That is an objection. Mm-hmm. This is which will not be the case in holacracy, because things will change, mm-hmm. because accountabilities are not fused with the people.
Yes.
So in sociocracy, the idea is that we are like a body, and if one part of my body cannot do it, I will not be able to run the marathon. Yeah. So I will have to stop. So the idea is to check before decision if every member of the cell, of the circle, is able to do the marathon. If there is one which is not able, we will not decide for the marathon. And that's it. This is the idea of objection in sociocracy.
And now contrast that for me for your experience with holacracy.
It's quite difficult because it's not the same way of
it's not even the same way of looking at it. That's my experience too. It's a totally different.
Absolutely.
We use the same language and the mechanics of the process look similar on the surface, but it means something totally different, and so does an objection.
Yeah. The only process which is very similar is the election without candidate, what I have seen. For me, it's very similar.
Yes, and we took that right from sociocracy and thought it was a brilliant contribution. It's such a great process.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably still some more it could evolve, but it was great. We haven't found anything better yet. But when it comes to this, the idea of what an objection is and how decisions are taken, and in holacracy, we're not just talking about any decision, we're talking about governance decisions. But within that, with holacracy, it's in your marathon example, to continue on that, for one, there's more rules of what we call dynamic steering embedded in holacracy. So we're less interested in upfront prediction of, do we think we can run this marathon? We're more interested in, can we try it and see? Much more embedded in the rule system. And that's a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, when listening to you, I say, the way of thinking objection in sociocracy is directly connected to people and in absence of governance, accountabilities and rules. So when coming back to holacracy and objection, it's completely different. The mindset, the posture, completely different.
Totally different. In holacracy, since the governance proposals are about roles and accountabilities, they're not actually about people at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not an objection that I can't fill it. I mean, that just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to use people's names in the governance proposals at all.
Absolutely.
So the question is there a reason that this role can't have this accountability, or that this accountability is not workable? It will cause harm to the system. And we're always in holacracy making governance in almost the ideal world scenario of assuming you have the resources, assuming we have the right people filling the right roles, so there's capacity. And of course, that's not always true, but that's the domain of operations now, where we have to allocate the limited resources we have, and we have to make sure we get as best fit for role as we can, or correct that if it's not there.
Yeah.
And all that's separated. So in holacracy, governance can focus just on theoretically, theoretically is the wrong word, but in an ideal world, if we have the right resources and the right people, is this role, whoever's filling it, regardless of that, filled by the right person, is this role capable of holding this accountability or these accountabilities? And that's what we're asking, is that workable? So we're not looking for a personal objection in any way at all. It's not, does this work for you? It's not personal. It's not looking at the people as a part of the body. It's not looking at the organization as just our larger body. It's looking at the organization as a separate entity that has its own roles. Those are the parts of the organization. And we show up and fill roles. But governance is not about us. It's about the roles. It's about the structure of the organization and its roles to do its work for its purpose. And that's what we're structuring. It's totally separated from us. And at the same time, we have a whole operational component of holacracy that then integrates them, that then says, well, in reality, we have limited resources, we have people filling roles, and let's make the best decisions we can given the authorities and the process we've set up in governance. And so I think you're right. So to me, it's a different threshold. So it's not you can approximate holacracy through sociocratic process, and at the same time, the decision-making threshold is different. What would be valid to go back to and say, wait, objection in sociocracy is not valid in holacracy. It might be that the reverse is true, but I don't think so. And again, area for more exploration, but I think it's a different threshold. With sociocracy, the threshold is the consent of the people, and that is not the threshold in holacracy.
Yeah.
It is about workability for the organization, and there's many more rules in the process for making sure that we're not getting stuck in our own stuff, and instead really focused on the organization, its purpose, its structure, and a structure that helps hold all that. And yet, ironically, it's so embracing of us people. It's not about stopping that. It's my experience, having practiced the sociocracy methods at least for a while. They left me feeling limited, and like there was too much ego in the way, something like that. And I wanted a space which was more embracing, more inviting, and yet kept a focus on something beyond just the group of us feeling warm and fuzzy, and got to real work of the world and organizing around it. That said, I don't mean that in a negative way. I really appreciated what I saw in sociocracy a lot, and it was through the success of it that I kind of felt like there's got to be something more. And we were already working on so much other stuff that we kind of took the best of sociocracy and started kind of working towards something different.
Yeah. When I first discovered Holacracy, I thought it was just some variant adjustment on the top of sociocracy. But now I've dived in, I made a lot of trainings and so on. For me, it's two worlds, it's two ways of looking at things, and there is entities you cannot treat with holacracy, such as family, such as community.
It's not relevant
and
from
sociocracy is perfect for that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to organization, it's another world. We are very limited with sociocracy, what I can see on the different projects.
Yep.
And holacracy is an answer. So there is a focus on organization.
Yep.
Which is the beauty and the limit of holacracy, which consider only the organizations.
Yep.
And with sociocracy, it's a focus on the people. And the idea of taking care of the people, of the we, of all the people.
Yep. And yet, holacracy does that as well.
Oh, yeah. That's the point I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And holacracy, this taking care of people is not the objective. The first objective is very focused on the organization. But by doing that, what I discovered, which is very amazing, what I discovered, by doing that, we take care of the fact the people are help me.
The people can take care of themselves, but not in a negative way. It allows the people to show up fully, authentically in service of something larger than themselves. It's, as you said, it's the consequence. It's by not making it the objective, we actually serve it, I think, better.
Yeah, like the harmony, what I told you previously.
Yeah. This is a lot like, there's some great research looking at now the companies driven by the shareholder model, profit motive, and those that have made the leap to a stakeholder model that embraces all stakeholders.
Yep.
And there's great data now that shows that those companies that make profit not the objective, they make serving all of the stakeholders the objective, the communities, the employees, everybody, actually generate more profit for the investors than the companies that make that the primary objective. And I think the same thing holds here. I think holacracy generates a more embracing environment for the people by making that not the objective, but something that is more encompassing, that is broader, the objective.
And what I discovered, which is very amazing because I evolved, is that with holacracy you are much more in respect with the people. You are not considering them as a victim, so you have to take care of him.
Yes.
You focus on the organization, and then they are able enough, they are big enough, and they are strong enough to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I find that too.
That's okay. So you don't feed the infernal triangle of the victim and saver.
Yes, and this is where the facilitation of holacracy governance meetings is very different, I think, than the facilitation style in sociocracy from what I witnessed, where sociocracy is much more focused on facilitating the people, drawing them out, getting them, and I think what you're pointing to is that although that is necessary in the structures we're used to, it is still actually reinforcing of victimness. It is in a sense disrespectful, and I know it's the best we can do in most structures. What Holacracy does is offer something more empowering that says you do not have to engage people at that level and treat them as if they needed to be drawn out. Instead, focus on holding to a process that holds a space, that holds an organization, and allow the people to clearly see how any tension they sense can be processed rapidly and effectively into organizational evolution for a larger purpose. And if they see that, then you don't need to take care of them. You don't need, there's something paternalistic still about that. Even if it's done in the spirit of we, it's different than just holding a space that allows them to be more autonomous and more interconnected, that allows them to, as you said, not keep on that triangle of victim, savior, but get out of it. The facilitator in Holacracy is not in any way, the effective one anyway, in any way engaged at that level with the people. They're not in any way doing that. They're just holding to an organizational structure and process that itself allows people to show up.
Yeah, I discovered that, and I admit it's very clear for me, which allows the people to deblend from the organization. So so there is no more blend. So there is some deblending, so people can build or not leave the organization if required, but they can consciously rebuild a solid relationship with organization.
And it's truly a relationship. Just like once the parent and child truly differentiate and the child finds its own path, that's the first time really that the parent and child can have a healthy adult-to-adult relationship of two autonomous, independent entities coming together in relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's what anything before that is fusion, not relationship, not differentiation and integration. And I think this is a big difference in the effect of the two as well. From what I've seen, sociocracy actually increases a fusion of a sort. Even as it adds so much and it brings so much, it's not focused at all on the organization. It's focused on the people. So what you end up with is more fusion between people and organization. And it's looked at as just our collective construct, our container, our social system, our what have you, rather than realizing there's a separate entity here. It's like looking at your child as property or as just something that's there to serve us, and being blind to the fact that there's really life there, which at one point was the norm in societies, and it still is today in our broader world. With organizations, but Holacracy takes that step beyond and really helps a differentiation that invites a relationship now between people and organization, where with sociocracy, if anything, you get more meshing with, more fusion, more the organization is more hidden than even the modern norm. Although sociocracy adds a whole bunch, that's one thing that's the pathology, I think, of the all about the people space. And I'm sure there's pathologies with Holacracy too, and we'll find them in due time, I hope. I think that's one that it beautifully gets around, gets past, and integrates.
Absolutely. And sociocracy comes to we, and we is fusion. Yeah. And again, for organization, it's not welcomed. But for other staff, why not? And I think family or maybe social community and so on. I think it's a good, and it comes from there.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and that it has a gift to offer there. Where there is no organization, there is a community, and there's no risk of fusion with individuals and organization if there's no organization there to fuse with.
Absolutely.
Then it's about the people, we the people, and a community, and that works. Yeah. And then on another thread, I think another major difference is all the operational practices that embed dynamic steering in Holacracy. Sociocracy says very little about.
No. That's it.
Yeah, and we do in our certification training. Actually, a chunk of the focus is on dynamic steering in operations, and really looking at how we can take these principles of flow, agility, processing tensions rapidly and quickly into evolution, the evolutionary approach. How can we embed that in all of our operations from our own individual organizational systems and management? How do we manage our actions and projects and keep our head clear so we can be fully present in our work? How do we do it at a team level? And then how do we change our processes in the organization to facilitate flow? And I don't see any of that present or even pointed to in sociocracy.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's what it's trying to address. It's more about the people and the consent process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the key issue is the dynamic steering. Is that what in my first training I discovered and I loved is to be able to steer dynamically in organization or one circle. Individual has to go to a system, a personal system of organization, of self-organizing, and this is, in my opinion, a key issue. If the practice is not grounded there, we cannot go for dynamic steering, even on circle level or organization level.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. If the organization relies on our capacity to fill the roles, to energize the roles.
Yep.
If we can't show up in a way individually in our organizational context that is fully present with flow, that is allowing our work to be dynamically steered, then it's going to be really hard for the organization and its teams to do it. So I think that's a fundamental grounding. How can we have a system that facilitates flow, that facilitates dynamic steering?
And there I come back to the issue of taking care of people, because when I discovered that, I tried it. I changed my personal way of organizing myself, and it changed my life. It changed my life.
Wow.
I had less stress.
Yeah.
And I could do more.
Yeah.
And I could make put much more consciousness on the different subject. So I was growing myself without the help of anybody, just by adopting this jam coming from the holacratic stuff I learned in Paris some months ago.
Yeah, and it's not just any organization system. I mean, there's so many out there that are so grounded in the predict and control models, including both individual organizational systems and ways of managing projects and all of that are grounded in predict and control. And so it's adopting one that has these new paradigm principles built into it, and it liberates energy. I had the same experience with my own process, that it's amazing the amount of work I can get done without feeling overwhelmed, stressed. I mean, it is just in flow, and I am clear-headed and fully present for my work. On a good day. Of course, we all have bad days, but it was liberating and empowering, and it really changed how my life, my work, everything, when I got to a clear flow state in my own work and knew how to keep it there through a personal practice and process. And the power that gives to the organization now, when everyone on a team has that, and then we start looking at our team processes and saying, how can the team process also support this fluid flow of dynamic steering, of sense and respond? How can we change our organizational processes, our team dynamics, our team process? It's transformative in a way that goes well beyond just the impact of having governance meetings and giving people a voice to process tensions.
Sure.
This is an entirely different way to process a different kind of tension. And yet it's just as important. We need to be able to process tensions this way as well. If all we can do is process tensions in the governance meetings, we're missing the opportunity to really do work in a high capacity flow, present and without all the stress we usually hold in our bodies and our minds when we can't process tensions and when we just suck them all up and we're overwhelmed and overloaded. So I think those aspects are really critical as well, and another piece that Holacracy has to offer for organizations and for those within.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Were there any other key differences that you noticed?
No, I think we
covered them.
Yeah, I think we've covered.
It's a lot of ground, and I keep coming back to your point of two different worlds.
Yeah.
And yet they look so similar on the surface. You know, on the surface, and part of this is our lack of having written enough and gotten enough information out. But part of it is more than that. There's a surface similarity in some of the methods and processes. until you dig into it and you find out the constructs mean something totally different. The process is held totally different. The facilitation is an entirely different energy. All of that it makes it two different worlds, and yet two that look a lot alike, and that both, I think, are doing something to help our world kind of move forward.
Yeah, and we're doing quite a challenge to have this discussion tonight, because it's difficult to understand that word. I speak from experience, to understand the holacratic world without diving and
without experiencing it.
Yeah, it took me 5 days, and I've done more, but it took me at least 5 days to understand that.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to express. I hope this record will help, but it's difficult. So the only advice I can give people who are interested to know more about it is just I'm not saying that as a marketing issue, but just dive in. Such as we have to dive to understand deeply what is sociocracy. You cannot guess that in 2 hours. Mm-hmm. The same thing for holacracy. So take the opportunity to dive in a workshop, at least 2 days, 3 days, to have a taste what is it, and you will see it is very, very different and complementary. Again, there's a lot of things to cover in the world.
I appreciate your spirit of just holding that as, both of these have something to offer and they apply in different domains.
Sure.
It's really cool. So, thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it, Bernard Marie, and let's keep this exploration going and continue learning together.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.